And the last thing that could happen here is there could potentially be no solution. So I'm not going to show you the graph right away. I'm going to show you the algebraic approach, but maybe you can already start to think, or maybe you can guess, what it looks like if, we have a system of equations of a quadratic and a line that it has no solution, okay? So again, I've got my blue quadratic, I've got my green line set up, ready to go for my equal value method. Now we just got to be able to solve. So very similar to the same process that we did yesterday. And the other two examples, we recognize that quadratic. We've got to get this quadratic set equal to a 0. So we could either potentially factor, or we could use our quadratic formula. So I have my 5x. I'm going to subtract that from both sides. Remember to combine like terms. I'm going to add my negative 11 to both sides. Okay, so that's going to leave me with x squared. What's a minus 2x plus 6 equals 0. So maybe you jump in right away and think factoring, okay, because that a value is 1. When the a value is 1, it should be very simple to factor. So then we look at our diamond. So the 6 is going to go up. The negative 2 is going to go down. Well, you start playing around with the factors of 6. You got 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. What combination of 1 and 6 or 2 and 3 can we add together to get a negative 2? Okay, very quickly we find out that this is not possible. Okay, so just because it's not factorable doesn't mean it doesn't have a solution. It could be an irrational solution, right? We talked about that last chapter where we've got those repeating decimals, okay? So now we've got to throw this into our quadratic formula. So remember, x is equal to the opposite of b. My b is a negative 2, so the opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. B squared is 4 minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 6. Okay, all of that's going to be divided by 2a, a being 1. So we're going to divide by 2. Okay, so like we talked about last chapter, the first thing when we're simplifying this, the quadratic formula here to simplify the discriminant, okay? So the discriminant here is 4 minus 4 times 1 times 6, and it's a negative 20, okay? So x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 20 over 2. Okay, so right away you should recognize that the discriminant is a negative. We cannot take the square root of that negative value, right? So here, this tells you right now that this has no solution. Okay, there are no real solution, we should say. Right now that we talked about complex numbers, we know what it means to be a complex number and what it means to be non-real. But when we're talking about this, the solution of a system, we are looking for real solutions. Okay, I know last chapter we talked about how to pull this I out. Right, remember doing all that kind of stuff, and we can break down that 20 to say 2 plus or minus the square root of, what is that, 2i radical 5. Okay, but then all that, that's kind of just a refresher if you maybe forgot. But all that's just our finding complex solutions. But all intents and purposes, right, when we're trying to find the point of intersection, when we see this negative, right, the discriminant is a negative, boom, there is no solution, okay? So maybe what does that look like graphically? So as I look at our calculator here, I went ahead and put our quadratic in our line. Zoom in a little bit there. Okay, we have a quadratic and a line there. Oh, shoot. Turn over, flip back. Oh, it's already recording. So this is going to be sideways. I'm sorry. I thought my camera was turned over. Anyway, so here is our setup. If we look at our graph, remember our solution to a system of equation, we are looking for that point of intersection. If that's no solution, that kind of hints at that there would be no intersection. Okay, so there's your 3 examples. Reach out if you're still confused. Remember, the Delta Math is a great platform. If you get it wrong, look through the example. It shows you step by step of how and what you should have done in order to get that question correct there. Again, we get stuck, you need to reach out to me.